Alright, so in the last video we went through the theme itself and how to customize and add a new one. We're going to do kind of the same thing now, but with plugins. So plugins work a very similar way, and they just add functionality to your website. And no matter what theme you're using, you can switch your theme back and forth. Your plugins will always stay on. So let's take a look at what some of those are now. I'm going to show you some of the ones that I would recommend, and I'll kind of show you how to set them up as well. So if I go over here on the left-hand side to plugins, it works the same way as most of the other flyout areas here, where you can see it says install plugins, we can add new, or we can edit them. So we're going to work on just taking a look at just what comes pre-installed into WordPress. So by default, at least as of I don't even know how long, many years now, they have always had these two plugins. And really, Hello Dolly I never used. It was kind of I don't think kind of a joke by I think the developers of WordPress originally, where it'll give a random Hello Dolly quote from the play throughout the back end of the website here. Really, I kind of go in and just delete that for the most part. It's never had an update as far as I know. Really poses no threat, but it just kind of, no reason to really have it. Now, Ask Commit, that's actually a great plugin. That's going to help prevent some of the spam coming to your blog. When you have comments available for people, there are a lot of spammers who are going to want to get in there and get their links in there and do different things. I would highly suggest go ahead and activating that and then registering for it. So the way that you do that is once you have a plugin installed, all you have to do is click on Activate. And each plugin is going to work a little bit differently here as far as how it works. But once you activate it, a lot of times you're going to see now the option to either deactivate or go into the settings. So for this one, we can go into the settings and take a look. And this one's asking you basically to register. What you're going to do is you can register for Akismet, and you basically give them your information about your website and your email, and it's going to ask you to donate a certain amount of money, and you can choose anywhere from $0 to I think like $1,000 or something crazy like that. Now, if you have more than one website, I would suggest doing the paid version so you can have a couple different Akismet keys. If you have a site that's actually making money, they recommend, I think they basically say that you are supposed to pay for it if your site is making money. If you just have a generic blog, then you can get away with a free one. It's kind of up to you. It's kind of on the honor system. It is a great plugin, so I definitely support them. I do pay for a multi-seat license every year, so it definitely works, and I appreciate the services that they provide. So basically, you can go in and just go ahead and register. You'll get your API key. It'll walk you through all the steps here, but that's a good one to definitely start out with. Like I said, especially if you plan on having comments on your website. If you don't, you will start to see a lot of comments coming through, a ton of spam, and you're probably gonna get overwhelmed by it and be like, all right, I finally got to register for this. So for all my blogs, I always have this one. Again, it's not being paid to saying this. You can see it's actually part of WordPress. They have it pre-installed in there. Definitely a good one to have, but again, don't feel obligated to activate it or pay for it, but it's well worth the money. So let's go back over to plugins over here, and we can add new. And they're going to show you a couple of the big ones or the kind of more popular ones. But just like the themes, we can go and search the WordPress database for all different plugins, and we can add some really cool functionality to our website. And you can search from a couple different ways here. Again, it pulls up, these change from time to time. You can see Akismet's up here is one of the primary ones. You can install Jetpack. That's a really good one. We can take a look at that one. BBPress, which is like bulletin board. If you went like the old days of the internet when people were using bulletin boards a lot, we still use them here. It's still good for forums and things like that. But BuddyPress, where you can have basically like a multi-user community website. That's kind of a cool one. You can create your own little social media kind of website. Gutenberg, that was one of the things that we saw when we first logged into here. They're asking people to install that. It's kind of be part of the new version of WordPress, I believe. A lot of people aren't liking it. Some are. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of a learning curve, but whatever. So some of the ones that I like to install myself, and you can either search by keyword or by the actual plugin name itself here, is Backup WP. It stands for Backup WordPress. And what that's going to do is make a backup of your copy. And you can schedule your backups to happen daily, weekly, monthly, however often. You can back up just the files, just the database, or both. Now, there's always going to be times when you're going to want to possibly have to refer to a old version of your website. Let's say your website gets hacked, or maybe you make some kind of mistake in your pages and you have to revert to something that you deleted by mistake. There's also times too where maybe you update a plugin. Plugin updates come out all the time. I'm always updating those because there's always new versions, new features, new things that they are doing to improve from being hacked, things like that, that you're going to want to update those plugins. And every once in a great while, there's a plugin that just conflicts with everything else on the website and kind of shuts it down or causes really funky coding going on. And you may have to go revert to an old version of the plugin. So I'll download a backup of the website, put the old plugin back in, and that's very, very helpful to have. So for this one, let's go ahead and install this. And then once it's installed, you got one more button you got to push here to activate it. So it's either install and just keep it, or activate it and actually use it. So you can see when I have an active plugin here, it actually turns blue, so I know which ones are active, which ones are not. And with Backup WordPress, this is the one that I was saying that's the only thing that I usually go into tools for. And that's going to go over backups. So this one's really simple to use. Now there are other options. Again, I'm not being paid to say any of this stuff. This is just the plugins that I use most often. You can see this is free, so again, I'm not going to get anything for it. These are just the ones that I recommend. There are other backup plugins. There are ones that do even more cool features. Use what you feel is you're comfortable with. If you're just getting started, this may be a good area to start with, and then if you're still looking for added features, you can go on and explore with other plugins and just see what else is out there and play around with them. But for this one, I can go into here, and I'll always change the settings. So if I go into settings first, and I'll say, what do I want to back up? Do I want to do the database, just the files, or both? And I'll usually say both. And then schedule, you can either schedule it to automatically happen once a week, once a month. You can see you got all your options here, or just manually only. So like only when you want to manually go in and make an update. So if this is a blog that you're not in very often, maybe just set it to go manual, and anytime before you go and make any kind of updates to the website, you just manually make a backup of it. If it is something that you're working on all the time, you don't even want to have to think about it, just schedule it. Have it do once or twice a week, and say, hey, just store like 2 or 3 versions of it so it's not just overwhelming your server and just having a ton of files on that server. Just have it just like 2 or 3, and it's going to delete the old ones, keep the new ones, and you're all set. Once you hit done, you can hit run now. It'll make a backup of your website, and again, just kind of has in this nice little package that you can download or keep right there on the server. Great plugin. Another one I would highly recommend, and I'll go back to plugins and add new, is going to be Yoast, and that is for your SEO, and that's going to do a couple different things for you here. And we're going to get into SEO a little bit later on in this series, but for right now, I would say go ahead and install Yoast. And I'm going to activate that. Now what that's going to do is a couple different things for us. And again, we're just going to touch on what it's doing for the most part right now. We'll get into some of the advanced features later on when we get into SEO. So now that I've got that installed, I'm going to go over to Posts. I'm going to add new. And what you're going to see that's a little bit different this time is below the blog post, you're going to see this Yoast SEO option down here. What this is going to let you do is actually customize how your post appears as if it were in the search engines. Now, as of right now, you'll see that this is it has no title, so it's just coming up with the domain name. So if you were in Google, you would notice it looks almost just like this. So let's say, so in Google, it may show up as this is my first post - online marketing concepts. So that might be a good title. And then the actual URL or the link that would go to it, that display is fine. But now I've got no copy down here for that little snippet, that little bit of information below the post or the Google search results. So I can go in and edit what that is. I can modify, this is the best post ever read. Okay, now what you want to see here is that you're getting this orange bar right now. Until that reaches kind of a green area, it's not the best optimized blog post meta description that you can have. And you can see this is what you would see if you did a Google search and that showed up. You'd want to have a little bit more information drawing users into your article. So you'd want to kind of continue to write more and more and more until you saw this turn green. Now, it's not saying that that's the best copy, but it's saying that that is the optimal length for a description that people are going to want to see to possibly click on your post. Now, if you do too much, you're going to see it's going to start to turn orange again. Now it's saying, oh, you've gone too far. So that's Google only allows so many words and characters before it cuts it off. So just have just the right amount in there, find what that is, and have a very good description. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly what's in your post, but it should be pulling something very similar to that. That's going to make readers want to come in. Some other things you can do is you can go on the side over here. You can have, when you link this link into Facebook, you can have what that title looks like in Facebook. So it can maybe be slightly different. You can also pull in a different image for Facebook. Some different things that you can use for SEO purposes. Again, we'll get into more of the details of Yoast SEO later on, but for right now, know that that's what that does, and that's a great plugin. There are other ones that do this and do it just as well, maybe better, maybe has other bells and whistles on it. This is the one mostly used by most bloggers and is very popular. The other thing it does up here, you can see that these two got put up here. We're saying the readability of this needs improvement, and the SEO is non-existent. So we'll get into all that stuff a little bit later on here. All right, so I've been talking a lot about security and commenting and things like that. One other plugin that I would definitely recommend is going to be, if I go to add new, I'll leave that post, is going to be a program or a plugin called WordFence. And what this does is really locks down your blog and does a lot of cool things. Actually, it also will do a scan for malware and viruses, which is very important. I've used to fix hacked sites before. The version right now that we can download is free, but then they can also, there's a paid version that can do a lot of extra things that are very cool and definitely worth the money. I think I have that for one website. I don't have it for all my websites. Most I just run the free version of it. But this is a great plugin as far as helping to control hacking and just really securing your website. So we've activated it's still thinking there. So we're activating that now. It takes a little bit to do because it does do so much. So over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see WordFence has its own option within the dashboard here. You will want to maybe tweak it out a little bit here, ask you for your name and information to get into, to save, to notify you of any kind of alerts or things that come up with it. Go ahead and enter that information, but again, by default, it'll actually lock down your site pretty well for the most part. You can go into the firewall and you can start to fine-tune that. You can also go into the scan, where it's going to scan your website for everything from outdated plugins to code that looks like it might be malicious on your website. A lot of great options here. Out of the box, it runs perfectly, but you can then go in and really fine-tune it. So those are some of the main plugins that I would use just for any kind of website. In the next video, we'll go through a couple that I would use for blogging and just more specifically for blogging. So stay tuned.